But I just want to ask Natalia just to share a bit of a testimony with us about what she's been going through and also what God has been doing in her life in the season that she's been in. So, Natalia.
I'm not your typical Indian, but with Pastor Oliver, I negotiated on time. He gave me 2 numbers, and I presented him with a third, a higher. Thank you all for having me. My name is Natalia. Some know me as Juanita. And the part of my story I'll be sharing will not be the deepest, and certainly just the tip of the iceberg, but I feel that every now and again people need to be encouraged. So please forgive me if I don't make eye contact. I did write it down, and I would read it better than I would say. I've named it Against All Odds. I grew up in a community where people labeled you as a failure and expected nothing more. So when a person falls, fails, or messes up, no one is surprised. So before you are even born, the odds are stacked against you. I'd like to think that I am a beautiful example of what Proverbs 19 verse 21 says, and the Lord's will sure did prevail. From a very young age, I had been taught that life is incredibly precious, and not because I was told, but because I was determined to keep my mother alive against all odds. That is a story for another day, especially because it's one I'm still working through. But 8 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with kidney failure, having already been hostage to a few other chronic illnesses. This one felt different, and of course, it very much was. Little did I know how life-changing that would actually be. Year after year, I watched her suffer. I watched her deteriorate, and as a young adult, my own life came to a halt. It had been taxing, emotionally, mentally, physically, and financially. And while I questioned God about why she had to suffer, I never questioned him on who he was or who he is. I would remind him of the work my mother did for him, his people, and how she lived for him. And I always compared myself to her, how strong a faith she held, how long a day she prayed, how she preached and ministered and loved the people of God. And compared to her, I was no one. When she fell ill, people would tell her to just pray and trust God. And oh, we did. We very much did. They would see her for the warrior she was. And that's when my own fight truly started. Only I didn't know it because I had already been fighting for her for so long. And who am I to think that I would make a difference? For as long as I can remember, I thought myself to be a nobody, a person who could make no difference or impact. But I always had my mother, who was my absolute life. And I was convinced that without her, I would not be able to live. It's true, I really thought that she was my lung or my heart. A year ago, 3 days before her 52nd birthday, my mother went home to be with Jesus. And one of the many thoughts I had was that she was taken because I didn't matter. Until God had me reflect. And I want you, through this story, to understand how personal God's love is. I felt him showing me daily what I had done from the age of 6. And just one story is to let you know that every time she felt ill, I was the only one there. At the age of 6, with her having already 4 chronic illnesses, I had known and labeled every medication she had. So if she was in trouble, her 6-year-old was her backup. Right until the day she closed her eyes. And if God could trust me with such an important woman, imagine how much of a somebody I actually am. It is beautiful to be able to testify that I got a glimpse of how my Father in heaven sees me. And I encourage you to allow him to show you who you are to him. I am not the community failure. I am a success story through Jesus Christ. And if you're feeling like a nobody today, and feeling like you can't make a difference or do anything, or that you are nothing, ask your Father how much you mean to him, and he'll show you, because he shows me daily.